You can free yourself if you understand how this game works.
If you just bet a little bit more on the winners and a little bit less on the losers, the math makes sense that you're going to make more money over time.
This is about autonomy. This is about independence. This is about freedom. We want to give you guys the exposure and the insight on some companies that could substantially outpace the S&P while still owning, right, the S&P 500 index as your base.
Really excited about today's episode because
Yes.
I'll let you cook, brother. I'll let you cook and make everybody some money, okay?
Yeah. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Melanin Money Show, New York Stock Exchange edition.
Yes.
All right, how you feeling?
I'm feeling great, man. I'm really excited about today's episode because
Yes.
I'll let you cook, brother. I'll let you cook and make everybody some money, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So today we're going to talk, let's call this episode Inside the Index, right? Many advisors or talking heads online talk about investing. They'll say, invest in the S&P 500 or invest in QQQ. But have you ever actually went inside the index to understand what's inside of it? And so this is a philosophy that I break down for my clients, but for the betterment of everybody watching this episode, I want you guys to understand what an index fund or what an ETF is so that it can make sense in the context of why we're going inside the index, right? So when people ask me, what is an ETF? What is an index? The analogy that comes to mind for me is your favorite mall, right? Your favorite mall has likely hundreds of stores in it, right? And we know that there's some very popular stores. Apple might be in there. And there's also some of those little kiosks that sells the lotions and the potions and the stuff that you don't want.
Trying to avoid, like,
Yeah, you got to put your head down, right? And, in any given year, there might be some stores that perform well, some that don't perform well. But if you were able to own the entire mall, then I don't think you would care if a couple of those stores didn't perform well.
As long as the mall's performing well.
As long as the mall's performing well, right? And so that's exactly how an ETF and an index fund works, right? You get an opportunity to own all the companies, or let's just say in this example, 500 companies inside of this one index. All you got to do is press the buy button and you get a chance to own them all. So you don't have to worry about if this company is going to perform well or not. They are going to do their due diligence as the fund managers and replace the companies from the S&P 500 index, and subsequently, you don't have to worry about which ones are performing well on an individual level. Now, that can be great. If you do that, you'll do really well. There's a lot of investors that's their only strategy, whether it's buying QQQ or a Vanguard Total Stock Market Index or VOO, and they do very well, right? Consistent base hits over time. However, one of the things that we tell our clients to do is say, hey, look, have you ever seen Apple as a standalone store? Most people say yes. Have you also seen it inside of a mall? Great. So the way that works is Apple can be an individual stock, right? But it can also be held inside of an ETF. So when you think about it from that lens, what happens if you look inside of your favorite ETFs and determine, well, what are the top performing companies? And what would happen if I owned just a little bit more of them while still protecting my downside risk and owning the broad-based ETF? And that is what we call a core satellite strategy. The core of your portfolio, let's say 70 to 80%, is going to be a mix of those solid, stable ETFs. But a percentage of your portfolio can be those individual companies that we believe have the ability to have outsized performance.
Yeah.
Us following that strategy has allowed us to outperform the S&P 500 and popular indexes for pretty much the last decade. But at least over the last 6 to 7 years, we've been able to see a consistent uptrend by following the strategy, and you can do it too. So what we're going to do on today's episode, now, mind you, this is not advice. Past performance does not indicate future outcomes. This is information that is relevant in 2025. Do your own research and assess your own personal risk tolerance. However, we want to give you guys the exposure and the insight on some companies that could substantially outpace the S&P while still owning, right, the S&P 500 index as your base.
Yeah, and it makes sense because when you look at, in your analogy, the mall, right, some of those stores in the mall are losing money. And the only reason the mall is profitable is because the stores that are doing the best are making so much money that they're consuming the losses or the low performance of other companies, right? And so if you just bet a little bit more on the winners and a little bit less on the losers, the math makes sense that you're going to make more money over time.
Big facts. All right, so we're going to start with one of my favorites. If you've been following me for any amount of time, you would know that you've heard me talk about this. I called this out originally back in 2021. When it was at $23 a share, I told people to double down, wrote a whole white paper on it in 2023. When it was at $6 a share, publicly share this information. And it's Palantir. Okay. Palantir, first thing you might want to wonder is like, what do they even do, right? So they're a data integration and data aggregation company, and they have a lot of contracts actually with the government, which is why they've been able to continue to bolster their revenue. Year to date, they're up over 109%, and I want to say they're up north of 1,700% over the last 3 to 5 years, right? So Palantir is an amazing company to invest in, and guess what? It's inside of the index. It's inside of the S&P 500. So the good news is, if you knew nothing about it,
You're already investing in it.
you're already investing in it,
Yeah.
right? The greater news is, if I labeled the white paper in 2021, this is my favorite stock of the decade, right? So I personally believe there's still substantial upside, right? And if you share that belief, if you share that conviction when you do your own research, not only can you own it inside the index, but you can also consider owning it as a part of your overall portfolio. So let's just say you had $100,000 invested, 70,000 was invested in a handful of ETFs, and maybe 5,000, right, was invested in Palantir. That's going to give you outsized performance, because guess what? Palantir is probably carrying, right, that S&P 500 index. If we did an analysis on the concentration of companies that are actually making up most of the return in S&P 500, it's only a handful of companies, right? Like we've heard for the past, decade and a half, right? The Magnificent Seven, where you got, your Google, you got Amazon, you got Apple, right? Those companies, these handful of companies, they're the ones that are really holding up the index. But the challenge is, you don't have the time, the money, or the ability to do the extensive research on what those individual companies are, right? So instead of having to worry about that, buy the index and then do some research on the top companies instead of trying to research all 500 to determine which ones you might want to hold in addition to the index.
Yeah, so Palantir is one of the companies in the S&P 500. It's one of your top 5 that we're going to be going over today on what people should invest in, not instead of the S&P 500.
Right, not instead. In addition.
In addition to the S&P 500, again, because if you're betting more on the winners and you still have a stable base, you get the diversification of the index, but you also get the increase in performance from the winners. It's just like the 80-20 Pareto principle, right? 20% of the returns from S&P 500 is 80% of the returns from S&P 500 is coming from 20% of the top companies, right? And Palantir is one of those companies. Okay, so what's next? What's stock number 2?
All right, so stock number 2 is Oracle. And if you've been paying attention to the news, not sure when this episode will drop, but in September, the CEO and founder of Larry Ellison, I think is his name, of Oracle, his net worth actually surpassed Elon Musk because the stock went up a little north of 30%, right? Imagine that. And this is why real estate, cool. Private equity, cool. But what I love about the stock market is the liquidity and the speed at which your money can grow. Like, there's not many things that are passive in this world. There's just varying degrees of active. But the stock market has got to be the closest thing to passive income. Now, the reason why people don't think that is because people are so consumed with the idea of the passive income hitting their bank account tomorrow, right? The income is the income nonetheless. Whether you cash out or not is up to you. You could cash out if you want. It could be income, right? Right? And so it's just so powerful because literally while we're sitting here, as we're talking, our money is working for us. What's up, YouTube family? Thanks so much for watching the show. I hope you are enjoying this episode. But if you are watching this, there's actually a 70% chance that you're not subscribed to the channel. And that's okay. We appreciate you for watching and listening. However, if you wouldn't mind hitting that subscriber button, it'll let YouTube know that other people are interested in this show so that we can further spread the message of money.
And if you're ready to start learning how to build wealth and save on taxes, we highly recommend you join our Multiply Your Money Challenge. This is a 5-day virtual event where both me and George are going to be teaching you the advanced tax and investing strategies of the 1%. And we highly recommend that you grab a VIP ticket because both me and George are going to be answering your personal financial and tax questions. That link can be found in the show notes below. Can't wait to see you there.
Peace. One of the things I like to say before I get into Oracle, what they do, is the top CEOs in the world, they work for me. Right? I've never stepped foot in Apple outside of buying a phone that is not really different than the last 10 that I bought. But Apple pays me more than a lot of their employees. They pay their employees. Because I'm an owner in Apple. Right? And you guys ultimately can be an owner in Apple, owner in Oracle, owner in Palantir as well. Like, think about how powerful that is. You can get the equivalent of a salary, part-time, full-time, depending on how much you have invested, without ever stepping foot, without ever clocking in. Do y'all connect? I think I want to say that out loud because sometimes we think investing is the adult thing to do. We're beating inflation, right? It's better than a savings account.
Nope.
My company offers a 401k. No. You're doing it because the money is working so hard for you that at some point in the near future, you don't have to do the working. Do we get that? Do we fully grasp that?
If they don't grasp that, grasp this. It's okay to sleep in late when your money wakes up early.
That is a fact. That is a fact, right? So I want you guys to do a little exercise when you finish watching this episode. I want you to reverse engineer how much money you need to not work so that working becomes optional. Now, this is technically work for us, right? But it doesn't feel like work because it's not an obligation. Because as we're sitting here, our money is doing a lot of the heavy lifting and we get a chance to do what we want to do or what we love to do. And that's what we want for you. This is not about being on the beach for the next 20 years, sipping Mai Tais. If that's what you want to do, then do that. This is about autonomy. This is about independence. This is about freedom, right? At one point in my Instagram bio, I said I'm economic liberationist. Nobody knew what it meant, so I removed it.
Yeah.
But my premise there was I am a freedom fighter. My weapon of choice is economics, right? That is my weapon of choice. And you can free yourself if you understand how this game works. So let's talk a little bit about Oracle. Oracle year to date, I believe is up north of 54% as of this episode. A lot of that obviously being after that earnings call. And Oracle is into cloud computing, right? And so what cloud computing is what we're doing every day, computing the data in the cloud, right? Having cloud storage. Amazon has a cloud storage business that's actually substantial that many people don't know about. I'm not talking about Amazon today just because I wanted to talk about some other companies, but cloud computing is something that's only going to continue to grow, right? Another industry, this is a bonus, it's not on my list, is look at cybersecurity companies, right? Cybersecurity, because as we go more online, right, we need to ramp up security. So one of my favorite ones, my sister actually used to work there, is Palo Alto, right? So look at cybersecurity companies. Look at that one. It's not on this list, but I bet you year to date and just over the past 5 years, it's done really well. But the reason why I love Oracle is because of that fact. Like one thing I want you guys to understand when it comes to investing is just look at things on a practical level, right? Should I invest in Home Depot or should I invest in Lowe's? Or who's the lumber company that supplies both Home Depot and Lowe's? Right? Airline tickets are going crazy. They're so expensive. Should I invest in Delta or should I invest in American Airlines? Or should I invest in a fuel company that's fueling all of them? Right? So just think about it from a practical level and go a layer down to see what is the supporting infrastructure that is providing the value to the industries that are doing really well. Right? So if AI is at the forefront, why is NVIDIA doing so well? Because it's supporting the infrastructure of an artificial intelligence revolution. So if you want to be ahead, and that's how I found Palantir. If you want to be ahead of the curve, look at what is the supporting infrastructure of the industries that are slated to do well. Don't just look at the popular companies, especially if you feel like you are behind or this company it's already seen a run up, right? Which is a logical fallacy, right? What are the underlying industries that are fueling and powering the industry? When there was the gold rush, right? Who was selling the shovels?
Facts. They win anyway, right? They'll win anyway, yeah.
And so I want you guys to put on your investor hat. I don't want you guys to think you have to be an investor like me for 13 years to be able to think through this stuff, right? But you got to put down the phone, stop scrolling, and think about what am I spending money on? What's happening around me? What am I hearing a lot about? And cool, that might be a good company to invest in, but what is the underlying infrastructure of these industries and who's talking about that?
The illusion of choice.
You're losing choice.
Yeah.
Losing choice.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. That was number 2, right?
That's number 2. All right.
So let's go to number 3.
Number 3. We all should know this one because I know you binge watched something this year.
Yes.
Okay. Netflix. Now, what's interesting, again, I'm a big predictor of the market. And back in 2019, I have it documented. I said, if Netflix doesn't do this, Netflix will fail, right? And Netflix did what I said 3 years later. So I said that Netflix, in order to succeed, they had to start incorporating something called experiences. They already had a strong user base, right? But they needed to take that content and bring it to life. And actually, where we live in Dallas, they have this new, I think not theme park, but this experiences museum where they're taking the content and the characters that everybody knows and loves, and they're bringing them to life. And I knew that they needed to do that in order to differentiate themselves in the market. Now, yes, they have first movers advantage, but we got to remember history repeats itself. Netflix was able to fly and exist because they disrupted Redbox. They disrupted Blockbuster, right? But the disruptor can always be disrupted if they're not careful. And we saw the fragmenting and decentralization of streaming. I was like, okay, Netflix had to do something. They're still a market leader, but that's what they had to do. And as a result, now we are seeing Netflix continue to reemerge, because if you look at where I called it in the drop off in early 2020, 2021, it was substantial. I mean, it fell off a cliff.
Yeah.
Right after, like when
everybody's at home. So everybody invested in Netflix. So people was watching Netflix.
And then 2021, 2022 rolled around.
Plus came out Paramount Plus, all these other streaming platforms, and the competition got crazy.
Yeah, it went off a cliff. But I knew it wasn't going to die. I just knew that if they didn't do something, and that's a business lesson, right? Like, poke holes in your own shit before somebody else does, right? Like, and then plug those holes and figure out how nobody else can poke those holes. And so Netflix, company we all know and love, year to date, as of this episode, north of 32%. So it is outperforming the S&P 500, even though it's inside of that index. And I don't think I have to talk or elaborate much on this, right? Attention as an asset class, right? Netflix has your attention, right? Netflix is technically a software as a service company. It's a subscription company, has a substantial MRR and ARR. And from a valuation standpoint, if you're a business owner, having either one, ARR or MRR, is always going to bode well for your company because it creates predictability, right? They're the home of a lot of intellectual property, a lot of Netflix originals. When Netflix first came out, they were just getting the rights to content, right? Then they built their own studios and said, we're going to own that IP in-house, which naturally is bolstering the enterprise value of the company. Now, did they preemptively overspend seemingly in the early years? It seemed like that on the IP. But the thing about intellectual property is once you own it, you own it. It's the reason why you can go into Walmart and you can see the local college, right? You might have the Florida Gators in Walmart, right? Walmart doesn't have the liberty to just sell that. They had to license that IP from the college institution, right? And so as Netflix continues to create more original series, there's other streaming networks who don't have the infrastructure who are now going to do what Netflix had to do first, and they're going to turn around and want to license that IP from them, right? So sometimes you have to make decisions that seem preemptive in order to make the long-term decision, right? So people were getting on Netflix case for how much money they were spending on that new IP, but they knew how much money they had to spend in the beginning to license other people's IP, right? And so when we're even looking at our P&L, something we do is we say, how can we make our biggest expenses our profit centers, right? So for us, if we're outsourcing bookkeeping, if we're outsourcing something else, we need to own that.
Yeah.
If we're outsourcing all this money for intellectual property, we need to own it, right? And so that's what Netflix did, and that's why Netflix will continue to thrive as long as they continue to innovate as a company.
Yeah, they just broadcast one of the biggest fights.
Talk about it.
Yeah, in American boxing history, with who was it?
Canelo and Crawford.
And Crawford. Yeah. One of the biggest streamed fights, and you could only watch it on Netflix.
Yeah. So let's talk about taking risks. They had a few other streaming snafus, like Beyonce's concert or something that didn't go well, because they were figuring out the kinks. But the thing is, you can live in the house while it's being renovated. As a business owner, if you're afraid to start because you don't have it all figured out, if you're scared, if it's not going to go the way you want it to go because it's your first time doing it, you will leave so much money on the table. I remember going through the airport in Delta, they put it so eloquently. They said, thank you for bearing with us through our beautification process. They didn't say renovation.
Beautification.
They said beautification. Matter of fact, we got to use that.
Yeah.
Through our beautification process. Now, here's the real kicker. If they would have closed the terminal down because they were beautifying, I looked at their earnings that year, or quarter to day earnings. It was something in the billion. I think it's like $3 billion. Imagine how much money they would have left on the table because they're like, oh, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
We got to wait. No one's gonna, you know how many janky, sorry, Delta, airplanes I done got on with that. I don't say janky, but they could be beautified.
Yeah.
They could be further beautified, but they still made the money because they understand that you can live in the house while it's being renovated. Right?
1,000%.
So let's get into the next company, Super Micro Computing, ticker symbol SMCI, up 53% year to date as of this recording. Okay. Now what they do is they do modular building block solutions. They do comprehensive product portfolio, and they provide a level of energy efficiency. Now, why energy efficiency is very important at this time is because what happens on one side of the equation happens on the other side of the equation. And while we're seeing the advancement of AI and all this technology, it does consume a lot of energy, right? Like it consumes lots of water, lots of natural resources. And so we have to think more about energy efficiency as we continue to expand the technology that we're building. So again, it goes back to what I said earlier. What are these underlying industries that are supporting the next tech revolution, right? They say, you know what? Here's a more simple example. there are whole businesses. Now, granted, Apple makes their own AirPods and stuff like that. But if you go on Amazon, you can find cases and all sorts of stuff, right? Underlying industries because of what Apple built. There's literally companies that all they sell is Apple accessories.
Yeah.
Right? And so you can build industry off of another company that has built a lot of infrastructure. And so that's what you're going to find now as AI continues to expand. Are people going to figure out, okay, well, what is the shovel of this revolution? Right? And so having energy efficiency as a core competency as a part of your company in this AI revolution is going to be paramount, because all these companies that are going to be integrating AI are going to need that energy efficiency. So this is a company that stuck out to me, one that I think will continue to grow and expand above and beyond the baseline of the S&P's expected performance, especially as AI continues to grow.
Cool. Now this last one is interesting because it's just a tailored point to what you said earlier. When things are going well in the industry, what industry has to support those things going well? So I won't spoil it. I'll let you bring it up, then I'll save my points for the end.
Absolutely. So whether you're a believer or not, cryptocurrency is here to stay, right? Coinbase is an infrastructure, and it speaks to a broader point that we talk about all the time about being the middleman, right? Cryptocurrency is here to stay, but we need some type of medium, right, to buy, sell, hold, and transact with the cryptocurrency. So Coinbase, ticker symbol Coin. Shout out to Coinbase for securing that.
Let me get that.
Right?
Yeah.
Up 31% year to date. And we don't have to elaborate too much on the nuances. I think unless you're sleeping under a rock, we understand that digital currency is on the rise. And what I want to say is, I know people who are cryptocurrency enthusiasts or loyalists, they have cold storage wallets, they have all these things, which I think you should have. But we got to realize that cryptocurrency is not at mass adoption. And the reason why Robinhood is so successful, which I should have put them on here too, is because user experience is important. We can't, the financial industry is very antiquated. And so unless you're immersed in it, even sometimes when I log into Charles Schwab, I'm like, let's renovate this thing, right? And so Coinbase, from a user experience standpoint, is going to lower the barrier to entry for the everyday investor. Cryptocurrency is naturally going to be more attractive to the younger generation, right? And so we need to have an interface and a user experience that is suitable for that user, right? Cryptocurrency is also, Coinbase is also continuing to diversify their product offering, right? And the things that you can do on the platform. And so Coinbase, I believe, as the rise of cryptocurrency continues to happen, is going to continue to be a mainstay. And guess what? Even if you are too scared to invest in Bitcoin, which you shouldn't be, or Ethereum, which, by the way, with the law that passed with alternative investments, if you're not invested in cryptocurrency right now, namely Coinbase and Ethereum is back on the rise, right? I'm telling you, you are going to miss out.
You meant Bitcoin and Ethereum, or you meant Coinbase and Ethereum?
Oh, sorry, Bitcoin and Ethereum, my bad. If you're not invested in those two, you're going to miss out. Bitcoin and Ethereum. Because now, same way that by default, if you have a 401k and you're invested in a broad-based index, you're by default invested in some of these companies that we're talking about. That means everybody who now is invested in those retirement accounts will have the ability to be invested in these cryptocurrencies, which naturally is going to bolster the value, bolster the price, and you can benefit from that. Will there be some volatility and fluctuation from people who have been holding for a very long time, like myself? Absolutely. Well, I'm not taking any chips off the table because I can actually borrow against the value of my account.
Yeah, Ethereum is up 80% year to date, by the way. 80%.
Listen, can't make this up, right? So guys, but here, my point of that was saying is, let's just say you're still trying to figure out cryptocurrency. Invest in the infrastructure where cryptocurrency has to be transacted, and now you can still get that exposure, right, by investing in Coinbase.
100%. And here's what we're saying, guys. Number one, you can't save yourself to wealth.
Okay.
Right? So you have to invest. And if just investing in the S&P 500 is enough for you, cool, that's okay. Right? But this episode is for the people that want a little bit more than the standard 10 or 15 or whatever percent that your advisor said that you should be getting in your portfolio, right? We want to reach financial freedom, but if there's a way to get there faster, I want to get there faster. And the satellite portfolio strategy has worked, not just for our clients, but it's worked for us as well, and helped us be able to build wealth while still having a risk tolerance that allows us to sleep at night. Because no point in trying to build all this wealth if you can't sleep at night. So, please, again, this is not investment advice. Okay?
Do your own research.
We do your own research on all these companies. But even if you just take the strategy alone, how do I keep a broad-based index fund, an ETF, but still take a portion of our money and get outsized returns. If you take nothing away from this episode, please take that. And with that being said, do us the favor, guys. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. Again, 70% of the people that watch these episodes are not subscribed. We want to come back and give you more information, right? These things change and are updated all the time. So make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and stay connected to the Melanin Money movement. And we can't wait to see you on the next episode.